on tonight's agenda, public participation. Any member of the public who wishes to address the Advisory Board of Public Works is asked to submit any comments or concerns to in writing and secure at the Dropbox offices at the Town Hall at least 2 hours prior to the start of the meeting. Alternatively, members of the public are invited to participate via the Zoom virtual meeting using the instructions listed below. All right, so number 2 on the agenda, water rate discussion follow-up.
Chris, hang on. Ann, you don't have any public participation there, do you?
None.
Okay.
None.
Sorry, Chris.
Okay. Water rate discussion and follow-up.
So I guess, as you found out over the weekend when I got the packet out to you, Matt took some of the comments and tried to address them in creating that third option to evaluate tonight. So I don't know if Matt, maybe you want to run through it really quick one more time, just to kind of give an overview, and then the board can open up for some discussion.
We just lost Matt.
I think Matt just dropped off.
Yeah, he dropped off for a second.
Oh. Come back, Matt.
You're gonna be back. So when he gets back on, we'll open up for him. And he did to come up with that alternative option for you, and some of the dialing in that happened based on the comments provided.
Hey, so can I ask a question while we wait for Matt?
Absolutely.
I just wonder, Joe, if you go and maybe, I just wondering, I went to the MWRA site just to see, I was just curious about their charges, and they list for the town of Wakefield their FY21 assessment. Let's see, as an 11.4% increase.
Yep.
And I'm assuming you've taken that into consideration somehow, but I just was wondering, did you just round down to 11%, or that was one question I had. And then the second one on page, let's see, is it page 3? It says that our assessment for water for FY21 on our slide here is 2.6. But if I'm reading the MWRA site correctly, it says that the final FY21 water assessment for Wakefield is 2.874 million. So I just wanted to ask you about that, if I could.
Yep. So any of the numbers that we used in putting this together are straight from the MWRA and straight out of our budget. So the 11 versus 11.4, I don't know if you rounded that, Matt, just to keep the presentation clean.
I was disconnected for a moment. Can you just catch me up? What specifically are you talking about right now?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. I just was poking around on the MWRA site this afternoon, and I noticed they have a spreadsheet, and it lists Wakefield's final assessed fees for FY21.
Yep.
And for the water assessment, it lists it. Our slide says it's 2.6, but on their site it reads 2.874 million. So I wanted to double check that number. That was one. The second is on slide 4. It says the MWRA assessment was up 11% in FY21, and on their slides, on the data spreadsheet that MWRA has posted for Wakefield, it says 11.4%. And I don't mean to be splitting hairs, but I just wanted to make sure that the numbers were correct.
Okay, good question. Let's get this figured out.
And then,
Maria, those numbers are definitely consistent with what I have here too.
Okay, and but true transparency here, this is not my specialty, numbers in general. And then my last question, and I'll be quiet for the moment, is our estimates are based on user consumption of 65 gallons a person. And I had in my head 80 for some reason, and so I just Googled it, and it's because the us.gov site says 80 to 100 per person. And maybe Wakefield, maybe 65 is our average if you've done that, but I just wanted to point that out as well. Just throwing all those out there. So thank you.
Maria, where was the 65? What was that in reference to on our?
The 65 in our, I'm sorry, on slide, what is it?
Yeah, it was
it's
a
in our
metric.
Assumptions.
It was a metric that we used to calculate gallons per day when we're trying to get at a usage to use for the quarterly bills to represent the average residential user. We went with 65.
Yeah, I'm sorry, slide 14. Thank you, Matt.
You know what we report in our annual statistical report, Bill or Joe? Do you know that? Like what our actual is? Because I know like Melrose is like 50 or something. I know 65 is the DEP recommended cutoff, but I'm curious what you calculate your actual to be.
Let me look up the report right now. Sorry, I'm on my laptop. Hang on.
Okay.
Is it okay if I try and tackle a different question, or do you want me to wait on that?
No,
Well, this is gonna take me a minute to log in and find, so please, by all means.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I'm understanding Maria's question before I comment. So let's do it this way. Do you mind if I share something on the screen?
not at all. Thank you.
Okay. Can you see this file?
Okay, so is that from the MWRA?
Yes, this is
Okay.
published by the MWRA.
Yes. Okay.
So I highlighted Wakefield's numbers. These are the final assessments for FY21.
Right.
So what was your question related to this? I'm sorry, I'm still
So-
catching up.
So my question, that first one, Matt, was, bear with me because I have to go back to your slide. On slide number 3,
Yep,
under budget for water, the second bullet, it's saying that the assessment was 2.6.
yep, okay.
Maybe I messed up. Is it, I'm
Nope.
reading the final assessment as 2.8. Is that, maybe that's not a big
Nope,
deal? but-
you're correct. That was an oversight on our part. It's possible that when this slide was put together, only the preliminary numbers were available.
Sure.
And that
Yep.
might represent the preliminary number, not the final number.
Okay.
If that's the case, I apologize, but
Again, I was just, Googling around myself. So,
Yep. So let me just show you something to make you feel a little bit better about it, hopefully. One sec. I got more files to share, and I think I can only share one at a time. Can you see this spreadsheet?
yes.
Okay, so take a look here. See that number?
Yes.
That's the number that we actually used in the analysis, the financial analysis, and also this is the workbook that guided us on the rates and all the calculations around the rates. So just to have
Great.
confidence that we had the final number properly in our analysis, we just misrepresented it on that slide.
Okay. Perfect.
And does the same apply for sewer?
I think, let's see. I thought the sewer was okay.
So it's 6.6 million on that. Yeah, and it's about that on the final.
So, and then my other, just the other question I had, Matt, again, maybe, did you already answer it, and forgive me, on slide 4, their overall assessment, my read is that it was 11.4, but the slide says 11, but I'm assuming you deferred to the actual numbers since you've got this spreadsheet
Yeah,
in front of us.
It's possible we rounded down. It's also possible that 11% represented, again, based on the preliminary. I don't remember for sure, but
Okay,
but you are correct. It should be 11.4.
okay, all right. Thanks. I just double checking on my own. They didn't match up, so I just wanted to ask. That's all. Thank you.
Sure, no problem.
That level of detail is impressive.
Well, I wish I understood all the numbers as well as my colleagues Elena and Chris, but I appreciate your patience.
Honestly, Maria, it sounds like you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing, right?
Well, trying. So Matt, I'm sorry. Please take it away.
Oh, no worries. I'm glad we're able to answer some of your questions off the top. Joe, do you want to provide an answer on that other question that's still outstanding, or you want to wait on that?
So I'm buffering trying to get into the VPN to get the report. So I might interrupt you as we move on a little bit, but
Okay, so should we just move forward with the rates then?
for right now, I would, yeah.
Okay. So, good evening, everyone. It sounds like the board's had an opportunity to review the latest slides. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's probably not necessary, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but probably not necessary to go through them in the detail that we've been going through them on the prior meetings.
Yeah, Matt, if you don't mind me interrupting, what I think the best thing to do is if we could briefly summarize each option. So if the viewers at home wanted to watch, briefly summarize our options that we have, and I guess it's me speaking, but for me, I'd like to see the options in order from least to greatest, as in rates going up for FY 2021, meaning the most current, or I should say, the approaching budget year.
So
If that came out correctly, but
just to clarify, the different options may not have consistency with
Mhm.
water and sewer rates going up in terms of what's most or what's least. It's kind of it might be more of a mixed bag. So are you looking for water separate from sewer, or
more or less altogether, what's going to be the least to greatest impact on the ratepayer?
okay? And any particular ratepayer that you're wondering about, or just ratepayer in general?
In general, I'm sure as you go, there'll be questions that we all can bring up, and
Okay, so before we
I
dive
kind
into
of want to
that,
make this as simple as possible for people that may be watching this at some point.
okay, I'll do my best to satisfy your request. Just so everyone's aware, and I'm pretty sure you're already aware of this, but I'll say it anyway. So since we last met, we took your advice and we've trimmed down the number of options presented in this presentation and started to focus on the ones that you were most interested in seeing. You may recall last week that we had 3 options that were related to increases on the flat rate alone. We decided to take those out. Together, we decided to take those out. And there was also one option that was a tiered option that also didn't have much support. So we decided to take that out as well. So that left us with 2 options from the last set of slides that you saw from last week's meeting. Those were options 5 and 6 in that presentation. And now they're in here, they're just renamed. So 5 became option 1 and 6 became option 2. And then we went ahead and took your advice with creating another option, one with less differential in the tier structure, in terms of the rates in the tier structure than what we had prior. The tiers themselves, in terms of usage per tier, hasn't changed. Just the rates and the change for that last option. It's a new option, essentially. So we have 3 options for your review tonight. Option 1 is the former option 5, as I mentioned. So this option is the same as what you saw last week. It just has a new number. So on this one, for water, we're calling it a little bit of a lower increase for FY21, which means that the increases are a little bit on the higher side in the subsequent years for that reason. So when I say that it's a lower increase for FY21, that's really in relation to what we saw with the other option, because it's a little bit of a higher increase. It's kind of the inverse of this. So for water, this one has tier 2 going up 4.6%, tier 1 0%. That hasn't changed. Tier 3 9.2%, tier 4 18.4%. And this slide is laid out the exact same as what you've seen before. So you have the bills down below for the different user examples that we had included. The sewer slide, this is kind of the mixed bag that I was referring to a second ago, because this doesn't have, excuse me, the same lower increase for FY21 as water. This one's a little bit higher. So it's kind of the inverse of what we just saw with water. A little bit higher increase for FY21, which means that the increases for FY22 through 25 would be a little bit lower based on our projections. And again, the same layout. So one thing that's new with the slides since last week is we added that last column on the bottom table. So that might be the best metric to use in order to gauge impact on the different users, as was just requested a moment ago. That was something that we were kind of calculating on the side last week with some of the specific users we were focused on, but now we have it included for this sample table.
And
So
is that that's based on the non-discounted rate, right?
Well, it's a % differential, so I think that means that
Oh.
it would be the same for both.
Got it. All right, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Sure, no problem. So I think if we're going to compare options in the impact on users, that's probably the best thing to look at. Because it combines both water and sewer together. So for example, the row that has the 2,000 cubic feet on it, that 3% represents the change between the combined bill, water and sewer together, for FY21 based on the increases I talked about, compared to the current bill. And then you can see the difference for the different user examples. We have a little bit of a larger one with 10,000 cubic feet per quarter, and we have a 30,000 in here as well. Is it okay if I move on?
Sure.
Okay, so option 2 is really kind of the inverse of option 1 for water, in that we're looking at a little bit of a higher increase in FY21, and which means the increases for the subsequent years look to be a little bit lower based on our projections. And option 2 is again the flip of the option 1 for sewer, with a little bit of a lower increase for FY21 and a little bit of a higher increase for FY22. So just as a reminder on the sewer side, you'll recall this from last week's meeting, but we're definitely paying attention to where the retained earnings are on the sewer side right now. So we want to be cognizant of that with whatever option is being selected. So each of the options being presented to you project retained earnings that they're not, I wouldn't say they're a high amount, but you know, they're enough probably to move forward. But you'll notice that there are different projections for the different options, really based on the sewer rate increase that we have for each of the options. So because this particular option, option 2, has the increase a little bit lower in FY21, you'll see that the projected retained earnings number is a little bit lower than it is for option 1, for example. So for this option 2, it's 166,000 after FY21 with all the projections we have in here. I'm going to go back just for a second. So for option 1, it's a little bit higher. So 275,000. And that's because the rate increase is a little bit higher for all the tiers for this option. And then to tie it together, this is your summary table laid out the exact same way as what you just saw. And you'll notice that the percentages aren't a whole lot different than option 1, especially for the average residential user, just about the same, slightly lower. And for the other users, slightly lower as well, just a little bit lower. So for option 3, as was requested, this is a new option. We took a little bit of a different approach. We tried to lower the differential in rates between the different tiers. The tier structure itself in terms of usage has not changed, but in terms of what the rates are in each tier, it has changed. You'll see that for tier 2, for example, that 8.5% is a decent amount higher than what we have for the other 2 options. I can go back and look. I think it's maybe in the 4 range for one of them and in the 5 range for another. And the tier 3, I believe, is also a little bit higher than it is for the other 2 options. And tier 4 is a little bit lower. Actually, it might be a decent amount lower. But the goal here was to try and reel tier 4 in a little bit in comparison to the other options, make it a little bit lower. As you'll recall with the service charge that we're proposing as well, the higher users, the larger users will presumably be paying a little bit more there as well. So we wanted to be cognizant of their rate too. So we've brought down tier 4 a decent amount. And in order to make up for that change in revenue, the other 2 tiers need to go up a little bit if we're going to keep tier 1 at 0%, which we have done here. And here's a similar structure for sewer. 7.3% in tier 2, 10.9% in tier 3, 14.5% in tier 4. The tier 4 number is definitely lower than the tier 4 number in the other options. And tier 2 is definitely higher than tier 2 in the other options. Tier 3 is similar, but I think it might be slightly higher here. And if you take a look at that retained earnings number, we have it right around 177,000 or 2% of the operating budget at the end of FY21. And here's your summary slide with those percent differences again, same user groups. So we were looking at a 3% for the 2,000 user on option 1, a 2.9% for option 2. Now we're at 4.1%. And for the 30,000 user, we were at 21% for option 1, 20.5% for option 2, I believe. Now we're down to about 17%. So in terms of impact on different users and trying to sort them, I guess, it really depends on which user you're looking at, because
I'd say 1 and 2. Or the majority of the users.
would be on the first 2 rows. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, right?
Oh, okay. Yep. Okay. So in terms of that, then you're probably looking at, you're looking at option 2 as the lowest impact, because the 1.1, the first row, you're not going to see any difference between the options because that tier is not changing. It's just a tier. They're in tier 1 only. In tier 1, we're not changing the rate. So really focus on the second row, which is representative of the average residential user if you're using the 65 gallons per person per day, which we've already talked about. This option 2 is 2.9%. Option 1 we have as 3%. And option 3 we have as 4.1%.
Okay. Thank you.
So that's probably all I was planning on saying on the options, but I'll take any questions or comments.
I have just a general comment for the other board members, which is just that I can kind of see it either way at this point. I mean, you know, the 2.9% looks great in option 2, I think it was, and that option also seemed to have a reasonable retained earnings in sewer. So, you know, if we're looking to have the lowest impact for the most people, then that looks good to me. But then on the flip side, if we think that impact is too much on the high volume users and we want to mitigate that a little bit, then option 3 with a 4.1% increase, you know, we're not talking about a big dollar number difference for the average user between a 2.9% and a 4.1% increase. So I'm kind of happy with whatever way everybody wants to go.
Maria, do you have any thoughts on it?
Well, I want to cause the least amount of pain, really, for everyone. And what I'm thinking is, in this new kind of stay-at-home world, I think everyone's going to have a more expensive water bill, water sewer bill. And you know, many people have been affected with employment, and so I just, you know, I guess, Elena, did you say that Melrose is not increasing rates this year? Did I hear that?
No, we're not increasing rates, but we're in a different situation in a couple ways. One is that we're 100% supplied by the MWRA. So our changes on the water side year to year are much less volatile.
Right.
So, you know, where Wakefield has an 11.4% increase, I think our increase, you see it on that sheet that you had pulled up, or that Matt had, our increase is like 4.1%, I think. And then on the sewer end, we have a decrease. So, you know, so we're in a different situation there. For sewer, we legitimately have a decrease in our budget on the whole. Our rate model shows an overall decrease, including everything, debt, operating costs, and MWRA assessment. And then on the water side, we would have had an increase of about 4%, but we're taking advantage of the loan repayment deferral for our last 2 MWRA loans on the water side, which is what allows us to get to 0. So it kicks the can down the road a little bit with, I mean, those loan repayments. It's going to make it so, you know, when we have a new loan every year, and they're all 10-year loans from the MWRA, then each year, you know, 9 years from now, 10 years from now, 11 years from now, we have a loan dropping off that kind of offsets the new loans coming on. So now we're going to have not repaid any loans for those last 2 loans this year. So 11 years from now, or 10 years from now, we're going to have more payments than we normally would, and it'll make it harder to take on new debt. So, you know, there's definitely a trade-off there. It's not, the money has to be paid back eventually.
Right.
But that's what we're doing.
Well, I mean, I like the fact of having the lower option, the lower rate for most of the users. Chris, what are your thoughts on that?
I agree. It's going to be an unpredictable year, and if there's any way at all, whether it's a 0.5% or a full percent, I'd love to be able to protect the ratepayer as much as I can this year. I'm concerned about the year ahead with people having jobs and being able to pay their bills, and I feel most comfortable with having the least amount of impact on the majority of the ratepayers going for this year.
Mhm.
So I'm going to be voting for option 2.
Okay.
Matt, can I ask a question? We were working through the scenarios. We had a slide that shows the percentage of consumption per tier.
Yep.
Remember what, do you think it would be helpful to show that? Because I remember tier 1 is about 40% of the consumption.
And I don't think that data ever made a slide, Joe. It was just data that we were looking at on the side.
Yeah, I wonder if it'd be helpful to see for the group to see that though.
Yeah,
Okay.
that would be interesting to see.
Yeah, I think as the rate goes up, it's the opposite with the consumption percentage, if I remember correctly.
So take me a second to locate it.
Sure.
Sorry.
No, it's fine.
And just to, a really sincere thank you to
Yeah.
all of you for working on this so hard and giving us such good information to ponder.
All right. It's a lot of data, but here it comes. Can you see this?
Yes.
Okay, so don't worry about the options at the top. These got unlinked throughout all of the work that we did. Focus on option 1 over here on the left. You'll see the tiers that we've been talking about for a few weeks now. And there's just data related to those tiers going downward. So the next table is water bills, which would be all water bills, non-irrigation. I thought it made sense to separate irrigation from non-irrigation bills because irrigation bills can throw the data slightly out of whack. I mean, there's not a lot of them, but if you're including irrigation bills in the winter, you're not going to really see anything at all. So I thought it made sense to put them in a separate table. So that top table represents non-irrigation water bills and which bills reach which tier.
Okay.
So, for example, tier 2, that would be bills that reached tier 2, did not reach tier 3, but got out of tier 1.
Okay.
So it's really the maximum tier, the tier that the last tier it reaches. You can see that about 33% are in tier 1, about 48% in tier 2, about 16% in tier 3, and about 3% in tier 4. And also you have about 2% of bills with 0 usage on it. But that would be a tier 1 user. That's just extra data.
Okay.
We also did the breakdown for sewer, but you're going to see very similar numbers for sewer. There's just a slightly less amount of bills. Actually, is that true? Yeah, slightly less amount of bills on the sewer, but very similar percentages. And then there's your water consumption percentage that Joe was requesting a moment ago. That's by tier, total consumption by tier.
Okay.
So Maria, basically what these slides told me as we were moving forward with this is the overwhelming majority of bills and users, however you want to call out that number, lie in tier 1 and tier 2.
Right. Which is good in these scenarios that we've put forward in terms of equity rate and hopefully promoting conservation a bit. I know we want to keep those retained earnings, but
yeah, so if you combine those two percentages, you're at 66.5%. So that means that 66, almost 67% of water consumption is in tiers 1 and 2.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
So, Elena, so Chris, are you sticking with option 2?
Sorry, I was muted. I didn't know if Elena had anything else to add or if anyone had any other comments before we take a vote.
No, I'm willing to support whatever you all support.
Okay. Where's my?
I'm just looking at the summaries again very quickly.
Yeah, I'm kind of doing that myself.
I have option 2 on the screen, summary slide.
Okay.
It doesn't show you the rate increases. I can show you that if you need.
I actually
Actually, no,
have
it
mine up
does.
on my monitor, so no worries. I'm
It does
flipping
show,
through on
actually,
my
it does.
end.
It does show it.
I'm curious what the town staff thinks.
I think we have, in my personal opinion, I think we have 3 viable options. I say that knowing that this time next year we could be having a completely conversation just because the unknown is so different this time around. I was surprised to see that the majority of bills or the majority of the flow was in those first 2 tiers. I probably thought it would have spread out a little bit more throughout maybe tier 3 and tier 4. But I think when you add the numbers to it, it kind of works out better for the consumer that it works that way. But I don't think, I think whatever way the board decides to go as far as the recommendation is concerned, that we could certainly make it work. And, we've laid the groundwork to head in a good direction in the long term. So I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that, Bill or Ann, but it's just kind of my 2 cents at this point.
I
Yeah,
do
I mean, you go ahead, Ann, please.
sorry, mine's going to be quick. I do think it is interesting to look at the rates after the discount, because majority of the people are paying with the discount.
Okay.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add is that when we originally we had the 6 options. We were talking that we thought option 6 was our best option, and we thought it kind of balanced everything that we had heard from the board over the first 2 meetings. So, but again, like Joe said, I think all of them work.
Mhm.
They're just slightly kind of reshuffling where the pot of money's coming from. So, I mean, I'm comfortable with all of them.
Okay.
But initially, we were always saying option 6 seemed to be the best approach.
I guess if
Well,
that's where everybody's leaning, then I will make a motion that we, is it, just to clarify, Joe, are we recommending a rate and then the council votes on it? Or are we voting on a rate?
So I actually have, believe it or not, I have 1, 2, 3. There's 8 motions to vote on. So it's all the same as last year with the addition of 1 this year. And I summarized it really quickly.
slate.
What did you say?
So you can vote the slate for that. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, can we call the rule once?
We can. I'll show it with you. 1 second. Let's see.
Need a teleprompter for that for that vote.
Adam, can I claim the host, or do you have to do that for me?
I have it set so anybody can share their screen at any time.
Perfect. All right. Let me
I'm
get
gonna
one.
stop, Joe. I'll stop sharing so you can take over.
Thanks.
We didn't talk about the service charges at all, today rather, but just before we get into the motion, just one last thing, Joe. So under our new structure, if you're 24 of the folks in meter size 3, or you're 2 of the folks in meter size 4, you'll be getting on your bill a new quarterly rate that this past year you would have been getting a rate of what, like, was it the same rate as everyone else, the flat rate of?
So for
Yeah.
water, it would have been $18 across the board.
18.
Mhm.
And then now, by implementing the service charge a little differently,
Yep.
that would certainly change for those people that you mentioned.
Okay.
So can everybody see my screen here?
Yep.
So I apologize, this is in read-only form. I should have saved it to my computer when I emailed it to myself. So the first vote that the board would make would be a motion to establish the tiered rate structure for water and sewer billing. And basically what that vote is telling us is that to move forward with establishing the rates as we've discussed. And then, that would be the system for the billing that moves forward, and then all the other subsequent votes would follow based on that. And so if you just read through this quick little thing that I put together, the next vote would be a motion to approve the water service charges, as we had talked about last time. And then there would be a motion to approve a water rate, so whatever option you decide to do. And then on the sewer side, it would be a motion to approve the sewer service charge, the sewer rate, then there's the sewer flat fee. And then obviously depending on what rate you choose, the flat fee would be calculated the same. And then at the end of this, if you remember last year, we had a manual read fee of $50. And what that was is if a particular property had 4 manual reads in a row and we couldn't get in contact with them to change their meter, so we didn't have to keep chasing service requests through the billing software. This is an ability for us to put a charge on that to try to motivate some people to get back and start calling us. To date, we've never used it. I just included it in this, completely the same as last year. We'll just be continuing on that option, and hopefully we won't have to use it. And then the other thing we had was the septic disposal formula. That again is the same exact formula as last year. If you remember me talking though, the laborers union reclassified. So the way it was written last year, it was referring to a salary structure that's no longer current. So it would just be a language change for the scale at the bottom.
So Joe, how do you want us to handle this vote then?
We can go through it one by one if the board chooses to. So I guess the first vote that we would need is a motion to establish, or a motion to approve the tiered rate structure for water and sewer billing with the tiers laid out as followed. So in the presentation, obviously we had tier 1 was 1 to 1,000 cubic feet. Tier 2 is 1,001 to 2,500. Tier 3 is 2,501 to 6,000, and then tier 4 was 6,001 and above. So I'd say we probably have to start with that, and then we can keep working through as we go.
The chair will entertain a motion.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Number 2.
Okay, so this would be to, this motion would be to, if the board chooses to approve the water service charges as follows. This is a direct copy from the presentation that you saw.
Ice cream truck again.
I know, I was thinking we're obviously at ice cream truck hour. Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the water and sewer service charges, or the water sewer, excuse me, the water service charges as shown. Do we need to read them out or no? Joe?
If you don't mind, I would. That way, if for some reason somebody sees something they don't like, we can stop and pause. That way, we'll touch on every item.
Okay, so a motion to approve the water service charge for 5/8 through 1 inch meters of $19.16. Inch and a half meters, $63.87. 2 inch meters, $102.19. 3 inch meters, $191.61, and 4 inch meters, $319.35.
So I think.
Sorry. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0.
Okay, so then your next motion for approval would be whatever water option. Is.
All right, so I'd like to make a motion that we approve water rate option 2 with tier 1 through 4 rates of $7.30, $7.72, $8.15, and $8.99 respectively.
Second.
All
Aye.
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 Motion passes 3-0.
Okay, next would be, it's basically to just repeat the same process. So this would be the sewer service charges as laid out in the presentation.
All right, so I'll make a motion to approve the sewer service charges as laid out in the presentation. Should I read the amounts?
If you don't mind, please.
Okay, you're gonna have to scroll to the next screen in a second, but 5/8 through 1 inch meters of $21.40. Inch and a half meters, $71.33. 2 inch meters, $114.14. 3 inch meters, $214, and 4 inch meters, $356.67.
All in favor?
Aye.
Second.
Second, I second it.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I thought it was muted.
The ice cream.
Aye. Passes 3-0.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve the sewer rate shown on the presentation as option 2 with tier 1 through 4 rates of $11.20, $11.70, $12.21, and $13.22 respectively.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll second it.
Oh, sorry.
We'll vote that again.
So,
I'm gonna second Elena's motion.
okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 3-0.
Okay, the next motion for approval would be the sewer flat rate. This is up to the board. So the sewer flat rate before the discount is listed in option 2. That would be billed consistent with how this sewer option breaks out.
Okay, so I'll make a motion that we approve the sewer flat rate of $370 as shown in option 2.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 3-0.
Okay, we're getting the home stretch. The next vote would be a motion to approve the manual read meter fee. That's the $50 fee that we talked about, and there's a 0 change from fiscal 20.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the manual meter read fee of $50.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0.
Hey, sorry to interrupt. As I'm taking the notes, you guys are going really quick and I'm trying to keep up. On the motion for 6, what was the flat rate there? I'm sorry.
$370 and no cents.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Continue.
So Adam, I'll send this document to you, but it's the same sewer flat that's written under sewer option 2.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. And then last but not least would be a vote to approve the septic disposal formula. Everything is the same as last year, except for at the end, it says 3 hours at current W4 scale at time and a half. That is just updated to be consistent with the labor union contract. So if you, last year it mentioned W9, they're reclassified from 9 job positions to 5, and all the W9s became W4s. So this would just be a language change, so it's applicable.
All right, so I'll make a motion to approve the septic disposal formula. For the facility opening and maintenance charge of $110 and the cost per 100 cubic feet charged at the sewer rate and the off-hours disposal rate of a minimum of 3 hours at the current W4 scale X.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passes 3-0. Again, I really like to, I applaud all of you for your efforts in this. I know this took a lot of time, maybe even some off hours time to get this all done. So greatly appreciated. I know it really, a lot of work was put into this, and I know we haven't really had a meeting like this in years past. So it was nice to get some of these numbers out.
Yeah, I think at least for me, like I mentioned last time, this process was good because we dove really deep and didn't really leave anything unturned. I think it's just the beginning, though. I think there's some other things that we can work on, you know, over the summer into the fall to set ourselves up for next year to maybe even do some more fantastic stuff. So I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation on my end.
When do these rates take effect? Is it July 1?
July 1, yes.
So when will the first bill run go out?
Andy,
July.
you?
Yeah, it'll be July.
Okay. So I'll be interested in hearing maybe at the, whatever our September meeting is, an update on whether we're getting complaints, especially from the, I mean, we shouldn't be getting any complaints from the tier 1 and 2 users because they shouldn't really even notice the difference. But the, particularly the large meter size customers or the tier 4 users, I'd just like to know if we're hearing complaints because, you know, the meter fees are going to be a surprise to the folks with those large size meters. And I just want to be sure we're keeping the conversation open so that if this really doesn't work for some reason, maybe we change it next year. Maybe we, you know, look at whether we need to modify any of those meter fees or tier differentials.
Absolutely. So this, you know, this will be the baseline for whatever adjustment we need to make this, you know, like we'd mentioned a few times before. So kind of predictable, sustainable, and try to flatten that curve from being all over the place and the increases. So yeah, that dialogue will be a necessity, I think, as we move forward.
On that note, Joe, will there be, or Ann, I don't know if either of you may know, will there be any type of a communication with this invoice to just, you know, point out that we've got a new system, or are we just going to let, I'm assuming it's going to be a new bill, but, you know, we don't want anyone having cardiac arrest when.
Yeah. So one of the things that we've been working on that we can't completely put together because we need, obviously this recommendation now has to go through one final step. But we plan on updating the website to be a little more self-service driven and to be able to explain this to people and be proactive about advertising it and to really make sure that people are seeing it, they understand it, and as transparent as it can possibly be. So we have a meeting on the 22nd, and if that vote happens, this stuff will be packaged up nicely in, you know, advertisements and different things like that. We'll probably take advantage of Jen and the social media and website and really try to bridge the understanding of all this.
Yeah, I definitely think people are going to have to understand that with the tier structure, you know, they control their own destiny, especially if they hover around that 2,500 mark.
Mm-hmm. Did I miss anything related to that, Ann?
No, I think, and we're gonna try to maybe put something in the bill or on the back of the bill on how to read your bill.
Yeah, one of the other things we're gonna try to add to the bill, we have to talk to Munis about it, but typically we get an abatement and we break down daily consumption. So I'm gonna try to get that printed on the bills, right on the front. So if you remember the bills on the right-hand corner, it kind of gives you your last 4 quarters of your usage. We're trying to add an extra column of what your average daily consumption was too.
Oh, that would be great.
Give people an idea of, what they're using,
Mhm.
consistently throughout the year.
Yeah, I like that on my electric and gas bill.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And the only other thing it's I seem to say it at every meeting, but I don't know how hearings will work, Joe, going forward, but
Mhm.
I'm not and also I don't know the number of people that came before us the past year, but it was, I want to say it must have been 10 at least, don't you think, Elena and Chris?
It was higher than the first year I was on board.
Yeah,
Like I only remember a few when David and yourself were on board, and I just joined. There wasn't definitely not as many.
right. So they've sort of, they've been eking up a bit in the past, since I've been on the board for 3 years now. This year being, I don't remember. So, I mean, this was the most that I've been a part of. So I'm just pointing that out because, with the financial climate, I think we want to just be very careful about how we're responding to folks that have questions, and really understand what the limits are that we can do to help, in terms of the abatement, the sewer abatement. So just putting that out there.
Yeah, I think
I worry about our abatement fund for sewer.
I think starting at the next meeting, it probably makes sense to review the whole from abatement application to hearing and evaluate the process and maybe update that to something a little bit more current. Because I know it's beneficial for us to have receipts and backup documentation and anything we can, at least from the homeowner side.
Right.
Take the internal documentation too. So maybe we make that a little bit more clear in the paperwork to kind of empower some more people to bring us more information to make the decision-making process a little bit more sound.
Right.
What would be really helpful would be to see, like for the last year, a listing of all the abatements that we considered and what we decided and why, just like a quick table that summarizes that, just to be sure that we're being consistent in what we're deciding and why.
Mm-hmm.
And Joe, my only last thought on the consistency piece on this and having the website reflect as much as we can, the clearer we are with folks as to what could be the issue or what they could check on their end, I hope that would help take some of the burden off of your team that constantly have to deal with people calling, or they'll be calling now. They won't be coming in probably, but people that have questions and have you checked for leaks and but all that kind of all the initial outlay of investigatory work.
Absolutely. One of the other things too that I know Anne probably has on her desk right in front of her now is there's 3 different type of meter heads I think that we have out in town, and a pictorial of how to read it and then how to monitor it overnight, and maybe an interactive calculator so you can figure out what your usage is, and a breakdown, a conversion into gallons. Not everybody equates cubic feet, but I think if you say that, this leak cost 1,000 gallons of water, I think that's a little bit easier for folks to understand.
Right. I
So
agree.
the goal would be to understand where the audience is coming from and try to build something for them to be able to see it how they perceive it best,
Mm-hmm.
and make it able to be understood.
Sounds good.
Yeah, thanks again, everybody.
So, Mr. Chair, the summary of this meeting, a letter will be drafted. You and I will have to work on a letter that will draft to the council on the board's recommendation. It's the same form letter as last year with just an update based
Okay.
on votes. I'll run a draft of that together and get it to you. And then I'll send it out to the whole board and we'll submit that for the meeting on the 22nd. And that's all I got for this.
Okay. Any other business?
We can talk about a July meeting, or if the board decides they want to wait. Ann, when do you anticipate the bills coming in for July? Sorry, I didn't mean to throw that at you.
No, that's fine. I have it here. So we hope to send the first, the batch out the week of July 2nd, then the 2nd, 9th, the 3rd, the 23rd, and the 4th, the 30th. So we'll start getting discounts. People's discounts will end the same for August. So it'll be August 3rd. You have to pay by the 3rd to get your discount, the 10th, the 24th, and the 31st.
Okay, so it's up to the board. If you feel that we should meet in July, we can do that. If you feel like we can table the month of July and schedule a meeting for August, we can do that as well. I don't think we'll have any other business in that month time frame.
I'm open to anything. I mean, if there's not much on the agenda that's gonna, whatever my board would like to do is fine.
I'm fine with if we want to wait to August and then we'll have more to talk about and some information from the bills having gone out.
Okay.
Agreed.
It's probably a little far of an outlook now. Would you like us to follow back up with you after the 4th of July?
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
Great.
We will do that.
Perfect.
Okay. Adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
All right, you're welcome.
Guys, thank you, everybody.
Welcome.
Appreciate everything.